On the logistics front, we have Brigadier Syed Kausar Hussain Shah to brief us about what is in store for us in terms of the infrastructure and logistics for CPEC. If I can request you, sir, to come and brief us about it. Can we clap for some Brigadier?
Bismillahir-Rahmanir-Rahim. Distinguished guests and honorable participants, it's my proud privilege to stand here today in front of you to explain something about CPEC logistics. I know that it's quite late during the day, but I'm sure my presentation would be quite brief and quick. And straight away, I shall go over to my topic. As my friend Mr. Amir has talked about OBOR, I shall not go into details of those explaining, but just briefing OBOR on the map. If you see here, this is China in green color, the light green. OBOR has 6 corridors. It's not CPEC only. As mentioned by Mr. Amir, that it is one small portion of OBOR. Otherwise, it is connecting 65 countries on the globe. And we have the top one, number 1 corridor, which links China with Russia and Europe. Then number 2, through Kazakhstan. And number 3, through Kyrgyzstan and Tajikistan. 4th is Pakistan. 5th, if you can see, is through Bangladesh, India, and on to Myanmar. And last one is to Indochina, that is Vietnam and Laos. So these are the 6 corridors. Why did I select these? Because all these 6 corridors would be connected with each other. And if you see, this thing gives us a lot of opportunity, because it's not Pakistan only, and we should not restrict ourselves to CPEC only. We should think big and think of this complete region. Can I have next slide? Now, why do we say that CPEC is something different? What I realize is that CPEC is a pipeline, and a pipeline has flows going through it. The pipeline throughput should be predicted mutually, because it's a mutual affair. It's not one-handed or single affair that Pakistan has to do something. No, it's all stakeholders who have to participate in this mutual prediction, and then they have to agree upon the principles, the policies, the rules and regulations, what all is to be done, and only then this flow will move forward. Now, what I see is that it should be enhanced within Pakistan by value addition and then plugged into the pipeline for onward transmission to or from China and rest of the world for mutual benefit of all the stakeholders. It should be secured from the threats. Mr. Amir has talked about security. Of course, this pipeline would only work, would only function if it is secured from the outside threats and even the inside threats. Now here, I shall just give you what is logistics. Logistics is generally the detailed organization and implementation of a complex operation. In a general business sense, logistics is the management of the flow of things between the point of origin and the point of consumption in order to meet requirements of customers or corporations. Now, with this definition in mind, which is the corporate definition of logistics, let's see how it moves forward. If you see CPEC, it's all about logistics. Everything is flowing through the pipeline and reaching to the end trade, that is the consumer. Now we have to put through and follow this pipeline to its end. Next, please. Now, there are few principles which guide quality of logistic services. Now, out of these, number one is the border controls. As we know that border controls play a major role in inter-region movement, inter-country movement, and the tariffs, the policies, the regimes, the international regimes which we follow, all matter and bank upon the border controls. And then security and safety itself, again, depends upon the border controls. How good we are, it should not create hurdles. Rather, it should facilitate the trade instead of creating hurdles at the borders. Next is the infrastructure. We have talked a lot, my friends have talked a lot about infrastructure, that is road, bridges, railways, air, communication infrastructure, everything included in the infrastructure. Then the competitive cost. That is very important, and especially in case of CPEC, because you know the Chinese products, you know the world where it is going, you know the capacity of the Chinese people and the industry. So we have to cut our costs in logistics to match the challenge. Tracking and monitoring, whatever is moving inside Pakistan should be monitored, should be tracked. It is from the security point of view, it is from the point of view of facilitating the traders, facilitating the business community, and I would say even door-to-door logistics. Tracking and monitoring plays an important role in logistics. And the timeliness, of course, if you get your products in time, and these are predictable, that okay, it will take a week, a month, you can prepare yourself for the future scenarios, for the next coming events. So timeliness is again very important in logistic services. Next, please. Now, instead of going first for the challenges, I have gone first for the opportunities, which are available to the logistic companies, to transport sector, all those. First is freight forwarding. If you can see at the top, freight forwarding has a lot of opportunity in CPEC. And we have to work for this in not an old-fashioned way. We have to adopt new ways and manners and methods to improve upon freight forwarding. Next is sea and dry port operations. Of course, it's linked with the freight forwarding, but we have to be very efficient in dry port operations. We have to be competitive. We have to be within cost factor. Cross-border movement and domestic logistics, as you see, it requires better transport. It requires better policies. It requires compilation of international regimes and following the international regimes. And then we have to improve upon domestic logistics also, that inside Pakistan, which will have warehousing and value addition. If you don't have enough warehouses, how to store the thing? It's not just the transit trade. My friend Mr. Amir was talking about that $75 billion a year. In my personal view, transit trade is not CPEC. Please remember. It has to be something else. Transit trade, we have the experience of Afghan transit trade. We all know what all has happened with that. What we are getting, instead of, I think, revenue generation, our industry is losing because of that trade. So here again, we should be very mindful of value addition in transit trade. Transit trade should be the last priority. We should not expect much from the transit trade. It should be what we are doing here inside Pakistan. You see, at the moment, high-end industry is already there in China. And we have to move that industry to Western China. They have to do that. They're planning. and then we have to add value addition to that industry inside Pakistan. Oil and gas pipelines. Of course, China is the highest energy required country. They require a lot of energy for their products, for their business, for their industry, everything. So these oil and gas pipelines would be laid in future, and these are the future plans, because transportation of oil through road is very, very expensive. It's not cost effective at all, until unless we have pipelines through Gwadar and Karachi up till Kashgar in China and then rest of the country. Railways, of course, is another mode of transport. We all know that the most cheapest way of transportation is sea. We know that. I'll give you the challenges in CPEC in the next slide in CPEC in the sea mode. But second is railways, and then it comes the road, and last is the air. So we have to develop railway lines. At the moment, government is working on this, and the $5 billion which have been added to CPEC, $46 billion initial investment, is kept for railways improvement. And we are planning to dualize the entire railway line, the main line 1 in Pakistan, and then taking it from Havelian to Kashgar via KKH or through the KKH, and the other option is through Chitral. So we need to improve railways to improve upon the logistic. Next, please. Now here come the challenges of CPEC logistics. If you see at the top, Karachi Highway. This itself is the biggest challenge because it remains closed for 3 to 4 months in a year. So no business can be undertaken if you don't have a road link for 3 to 4 months in a year. What will be done? So the major hurdle or the challenge we have to overcome at government level is opening up Karachi Highway throughout the year. Second is the border control. If you see, this gate is the Chinese gate at Punjab, and we on our side do not have anything here at Punjab. The first checkpoint or the custom station is at Sust, which is 80 kilometers inside Pakistan. So we need to develop something at Punjab, which we as NLC are working, and then facilitate the border controls, facilitate the trades, facilitate the pedestrian movement, the tourism. All has to be done at the border controls. Vehicles for all weather and terrain. Gentlemen, at the moment, our vehicles are not capable of climbing up till 16,000 feet above sea level of those heights which are there in Punjab, carrying loads and carrying the trailers, the containers, 45 feet or the 60 feet containers. At the moment, we're just going by 20 feet container. So we need to have better powered transport and better facilitated transport. TIR, Carnet, and other conventions. Now, TIR, we are now the signatories of TIR, Convention and Regime, and there are others also which we have signed, but our transport sector is not, okay. But our transport sector is not aligned to these conventions. They are not compliant to these requirements. So we need to make sure that our vehicles, our trucks are compliant TIR conventions. Domestic trucking policy, we need to review this. Security, of course, it is the, I think, mainstay of CPEC, and Army and police and rangers, everyone is geared up towards this aspect. Development of Gwadar is, ladies and gentlemen, another major challenge. Gwadar is not ready at the moment to take on huge load of CPEC. It is short of energy, the electricity, the drinking water, the other potable water, the road infrastructure, the hotel industry, you name anything. There's nothing at the moment at Gwadar, although they have good plans, but still they are far away from that. Skilled manpower, it doesn't need any explanation. Until unless we have skilled manpower, we cannot match the Chinese industry. As people say that it's like East India Company, we have been hearing about that. I say it's not East India Company. We have to match those people by scale, by industry, by our trade facilities and policies to match those challenges. And last is the mindset and the cultural change. This has to be brought in. We know from our experiences that wherever Chinese have gone in this world, they have established Chinatowns, they have established their own cultural and heritage things. We have to be mindful of those things. We have to prepare ourselves. We have to earmark the areas for those things. We have to cater for their requirements and side by side protect our society also, our cultural heritage also. So that is again a big challenge. Next please. And the key factors for success of CPEC logistics is the cost, timeliness, security and reliability. Next please. Gentlemen, I have taken help of this map. If you see China, their entire industry is located on the east or the center, mostly on the eastern coast. That is Shanghai, Guangzhou and those areas, Hong Kong and all those. The region which links Pakistan is Xinjiang, the Kashgar or the Urumqi area, if you see. This is devoid of industrial base. It just has the raw materials. So, at the moment, the sea route you can see is marked in the blue from Shanghai through Strait of Malacca and down south Sri Lanka to Karachi and Gwadar, Dubai, and Europe through the Red Sea. Now, this route, you see the distance in kilometers, days it takes, and average cost we have taken, not today's cost, but average cost it takes. So it is a cheaper route as seen from here, but time is much more when we compare with it. Next please, next click. Now CPEC route. Just see that if any product has to move from Shanghai to Kashgar, it has to travel about 5,000 kilometers inside China. Who will bear this cost? What will happen? So it is quite expensive, and if you see the cost from Shanghai via road to Gwadar and Karachi, it is over 10,000. Time, of course, has reduced just by 3 days. So this is one of the major challenges. So what is the solution? Next, please. Solution is that Chinese industry should base itself in Xinjiang province. And until and unless they do that, and Kashgar should be taken as a base for all logistic movements, only then it is somewhat financially viable, and time-wise, if you see, it is drastically reduced. Now, we cannot go for any business deal when it is to be brought from Shanghai or Hong Kong or Guangzhou all the way to Kashgar. What Chinese government has done at the moment is that they have declared Kashgar as special economic zone. And when we discuss with them the prospects of Kashgar, they say that it would be the responsibility of Chinese government and traders to bring products to Kashgar special economic zone. And Pakistani trader or rest of the world has to start off from Kashgar to Gwadar and rest of the world. If this happens, which will take time, this is again a question that how much time it will take, because at the moment industry and other infrastructure is totally laid down towards the east and the center. Nothing in Xinjiang province. So we have to wait for that. And then, as I mentioned, it has to be, Kashgar has to be linked via road, which is already there, pipelines, rail, and then we have to construct logistic parks en route for value addition, for warehousing, for rest and recreation, all those things. Next, please. Now, this is the last part of my presentation. What needs to be done? There should be a centralized body to address all these issues. We have forwarded this recommendation to the government also because everyone is working in isolation. There has to be one window operation. Only then we all can know what is going on, what is to be done, who is to be connected, contacted, and what are the policies. So there is a requirement of one centralized body. We should establish joint forum to address multiple issues resulting from international trade environment. It doesn't need any explanation. Reforms in logistics and transport sector, I mentioned earlier. Transport fleets comprising TIR-compliant vehicles should be brought into Pakistan. Then coordinate the layout of intra-provincial connectivity. The trade corridors, the western route, the central route, the eastern route, we have heard a lot about that. But there is a requirement of connecting these routes within the provinces. That is lateral linking. If you see, these three routes are the vertical linking. We need to have lateral linking with these main corridors. Upgradation of railways, I mentioned earlier. Effective layout of security apparatus, again, mentioned earlier. Next, please. We have to enter into joint ventures with Chinese companies and other international players. We cannot work in isolation. We have to do that. So please be in time. This is the time where we should be working on these things, interacting with other companies, with other stakeholders, other players, and going into joint ventures. Comparative environment. This is very important. If we remain restricted to ourselves and do not see the globe, where it is going, as Doctor mentioned about the future. So we should be knowing about the future so that we are competitive. Multi-purpose warehouses, that is cold chain, perishables, non-perishables, every type of warehouse, we have to do that. Establishment of logistic, commercial and science and technology parks. This is very important, gentlemen. And this is for the business community, that they should select the places, they should start planning, they should work for it, and then establish the logistic park, because it takes a lot of time to go through this. And this is what Chinese are doing. They are constructing logistic parks, they are constructing economic zones and industrial zones in almost all major cities. And it is from there they will start off with CPEC business. Development of industrial zone, well-coordinated center, yes. Now, you must have read in the newspapers that every province has announced its own industrial parks and economic zones. There is a requirement to put together this, because it cannot work at provincial level. There should be a centralized body which should decide where an economic zone or industrial zone or a logistic park is to be established, and what all it should contain. There should not be duplication of effort and wastage of effort. Awareness programs on the benefits and effects of CPEC. It should include the economical program, the social effects, the cultural effects, and of course, the environmental effects of all this process, which should be known to general public to allay their fears about CPEC. Next, please. This is my organization, National Logistics Cell, as we are working in the freight services, and here I would apprise you that to improve upon the transport sector, we are going for a truck assembly plant in Karachi, inshallah, with MA in Germany. So it is just because of CPEC that we're going for this assembly plant here in Karachi. Construction, we are going for the construction of roads, bridges, and other infrastructure. Border terminals and dry ports. At the moment, Torkham, Chaman, and Wagah, these are managed by NLC. We are going for Sust and Taftan to manage border control terminals and dry ports over there. Drivers emergency and rest area. It would be called as DERA. It is basically the rest area for the truck drivers. And of course, the general public also, other people can also use that. And these are laid out all along the three routes, the western route, the central route, and the eastern route. We have planned it with the help of NHA, and inshallah, soon we will be launching this project. Freight train operations, we have our own locomotives. Tracking and monitoring, again, we are working into this. Gentlemen, I end my presentation with just one comment. Next, please. Patience is not about doing nothing. Patience is about constantly doing everything you can, but being patient about the results. So I expect that we wait for the results. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Brigadier Syed Kausar Hussain Saab.